Roberto Cingolani, now CEO of Leonardo, has chosen very strong words to describe the international scenario and to defend the idea that this is the right time to invest massively in defense. Speaking at the presentation of the Michelangelo Dome system, a new protection technology based also on artificial intelligence, he began by openly admitting that he is in a conflict of interest. He leads Italy's main military and aerospace group, and at the same time supports the need to increase spending on rearmament. This initial remark, which sounds like a kind of warning to the audience, frames the message Cingolani wants to convey. In his view, the war is not ending. On the contrary, we are only at the beginning of a new phase, more insidious and more technological, in which those who do not invest in time risk being overwhelmed. In the background is the conflict in Ukraine, which has brought conventional war back to the heart of Europe and has put the role of the arms industry back at the center. Cingolani cites thousands of hybrid attacks each year against major nations, referring not only to traditional weapons, but also to cyber intrusions, sabotage, disinformation campaigns, economic pressure, and the combined use of drones, missiles, and digital technologies. According to his vision, the coming years could appear to be a period of relative peace only on the surface. In reality, they would be the time during which potential aggressors, old and new, design and perfect weapon systems that are increasingly difficult to intercept and neutralize. Hence his appeal not to be caught unprepared. In his speech, Cingolani insists on a key concept. Peace is not a natural condition guaranteed forever, but something that must be actively defended and that has a cost. If the international confrontation were to become serious, as security services and strategic analysts fear the West would have to be able to protect not only its borders, but also what he calls the Western standard of living, that is a set of rights, economic well-being, civil liberties, and social security that we now almost take for granted. At this point, his discourse takes on a darker and more apocalyptic tone. Cingolani notes that market fluctuations and diplomatic initiatives can give the illusion that the storm is behind us, but he urges not to confuse financial signals with a real strategic de-escalation. In his view, the only way to avoid catastrophic scenarios is a major joint effort by Western countries to develop advanced, integrated and coordinated defense technologies. If we fail to do so, he argues in a deliberately brutal formula, they exterminate us. He justifies this extreme statement with a comparison between the supposed values of the West and those of potential adversaries. Cingolani stresses that liberal democracies still maintain ethical constraints that prevent them from sacrificing their citizens, lives without limits, especially those of the young, whereas on the other side of the front, there would be regimes ready to send thousands of soldiers to their deaths in order to gain military or political advantages. It is a stark vision that divides the world into two opposing blocks. On one side, those who set moral limits on the use of force; on the other, those who have no scruples and can afford strategies of human and material attrition that the West is not willing to replicate. In this framework, technological innovation in defense is presented as the only way to bridge the gap. If we cannot or do not want to deploy an unlimited number of human lives, we must rely on sophisticated systems, automation, territorial and infrastructure protection, cyber defense and artificial intelligence applied to the control of airspace and digital networks. As a former minister for the ecological transition, Cingolani also carries the image of a technician lent to politics and then returned to lead a major industrial group with a public profile that blends scientific expertise, strategic ambitions, and a central role in the debate on European rearmament. The fact that Russia is never explicitly mentioned in his speech is significant. The enemy he refers to is almost always evoked in an abstract way as a generic, faceless adversary described primarily through its ruthlessness and lack of moral limits. In the end, the message that emerges from his intervention is clear. The era of pacifist illusions is over. Global competition is shifting onto terrain, where technology, intelligence, and industrial capacity weigh as much as, or more than, traditional tanks, and those who do not invest in defense and time risk, paying a very high price in terms of security and political survival. Whether or not one agrees with this reading, Kingolani Aches words show how an important part of the European economic and strategic elite now considers a long phase of tension, likely in which defense is no longer a marginal chapter of public budgets, but one of the pillars around which to redesign the priorities of governments, industries, and public opinion.